Welcome to episode 24 of the Lily List podcast, where our goal is to be a handbook for the living. This week, we're thrilled to sit down with Laura Jane Vincent, an accomplished musician, songwriter, and creative force, to dive into the stories that shaped her artistry and the unique journey she's undertaken in the music world. From her early days in rural North Carolina to launching her own record label and mentoring other artists, Laura Jane shares heartfelt insights into the power of music, community, and legacy. In this episode, we explore how Laura Jane's upbringing shaped her artistic expression, the lessons she's learned from touring and managing a music career, and her commitment to fostering a supportive, creative ecosystem for musicians. Whether you're an artist, a fan, or simply someone who appreciates the impact of storytelling, this conversation offers inspiration, laughter, and so much wisdom. As always, visit lilylist.com for more information on the podcast and platform. You can also contact us from the website if you have questions or ideas for people or topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. If you'd like to support the work of Lily List, you can donate using the links in the description, and if you find these conversations meaningful, we thank you for liking, following, sharing, or subscribing wherever you listen. Okay,
yeah.
Kick it off. Laura Jane Vincent, here's the dog upstairs.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you for being a guest on the Lily List podcast.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We met, I think, through Tom.
We did. Tom told me a really grand story about finding some files on a pedal board and getting them from there to a computer to let you be able to make an album.
He did.
It was a cool story.
He's the reason, sincerely, that the last Sift album was able to go out. So
he was very casual the way he told that story too, and then I learned more about it, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty incredible, actually." So it was a cool way to meet somebody. Yeah, of course he does. Yeah, it was a cool way to meet you.
Yeah. So, and we had you over a number of weeks ago and did a show here, which was fun.
We had a great house show. It was really, really fun. I love playing house shows in general, and you had built a great crowd already, and then some other folks came, and so it was just a really, really fun day.
Yeah, I don't like most of those people, but I'm glad they came. So,
well, you hit it well. You hit it. Good hosting. Good hosting.
So with Lily List, I always try to step back a bit. So I think we are really focused on stories and legacy to a certain extent for people that are thinking about that. But stories, I've always said, are kind of the true currency of humans. And to that end, stories kind of always have a starting point back to childhood. And so I like to start there with, where did you grow up? Kind of take me through. Are there some impactful things that happened, say up until college, or not college, but high school time?
Wow. I really had a really nice childhood when I look back. I feel kind of lucky. I had a good time. I grew up in rural southeastern North Carolina. So it was it's near Hoke County. And it was me and my mom for a long time, and my grandparents lived right down the road. So it was a real nice, I had places to go and people to take care of me and fun things to do. My mom was a single mom for a long time, and she met my stepdad, Al, when I was about 11. But long before that, I think that there was nobody really musical in my family. My stepdad is a guitar player and musician for a long time. And so it took a while for me to meet somebody that was musical. So I kind of did things on my own as far as just listen to as much music as I could. My mom had some artists that she liked and played for me a lot. But I kind of just would listen to the radio and try to find things. And she says I would sing a lot. I didn't really play an instrument when I was young, but she says I would be singing to myself at night, and she'd knock on the door and be like, go to sleep, be quiet. What are you doing? And so I just would sing a lot when I was little. And so, I just kind of had a really, a nice time learning how to do that. And I did take some piano lessons when I was about 8 or 9. And that really started helping me understand how to make music in my head, match music out there, and that sort of thing. I didn't really write or anything yet at all, but I started really understanding the grasp of it.
So when I hear something like Hope County, that sounds rural.
Yeah, very rural. It's actually Hoke. It's my voice is
Hoke.
Low, so it's Hoke County. It's a pretty rural area, and it's near. I guess the way it happened is my grandfather was in the military, and they were all military family. They lived several places, and he retired in Hoke County, which is near Fort Bragg, Pope Air Force Base. And that's kind of where he ended up landing after his last kind of job with the military. And so that's how we ended up there. Nice. And it was just a nice rural area. My mom had a little house, and I went to a good school, and I had friends, but they were far away kind of because we lived in the middle of nowhere. So it was kind of like that. I was the only child for a long time and the only grandchild for a really long time. So I was by myself as a kid for a lot. So, singing to myself and, entertaining myself with music was an easy out to like kind of do something different.
I was going to say, so as a kid, like a young kid, by yourself, rural area. So I'm guessing, a lot of interactions are, most of your time must have been spent with adults or by
Absolutely.
yourself.
My mom was the oldest of the kids in her siblings. And so my aunts were even like, they were only about 12 years older than me, but they were still kind of the grown-ups, So I was like very much hanging out with the grown-ups a lot of times, other than, definitely, all right, it's adult time, go to sleep now, Laura, that kind of thing until then. So I did spend a lot of time with them. And so, that definitely had a lot of influence on just, me being, I think, really, I don't know, they really would, talk to me about a lot of stuff. And early on, I felt like I grasped a lot of things a little early in a good way. And yeah, it was really, I felt very cared for. You know what I mean? They really pumped me up a lot. My family it's probably why I was so overconfident for a long time.
That was I was going to ask.
They were very much like, you are the best, Laura Jane, in a lot of ways. So it was really great.
So as you went into your teens and 20s and started to...
Reality set in. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, get out more and play. But I mean, that what you just mentioned can be...
It was a great base to set me up, basically.
It could create challenges or opportunities.
It was really
right?
cool in the sense that it gave me some confidence to start playing music early and be singing in front of people early. Because it wasn't really that I was discovered or that I discovered it, but I just started singing more. I didn't really have another outlet besides my school to play music in and to sing music in. So I was in like the choir and stuff. And my music teachers would be like, wow, you really got something with your voice. You should really, do that more. And so they were encouraging and realized I had a little bit of something going on. And I didn't really start playing guitar until I was about 13. My mom just got me a guitar. I just said, I want a guitar. I listened to a lot of country music and they all had a guitar in their hand. And so I said, well, I want to play that thing. I don't want to play piano anymore. And I do have regrets about that. I have to say, I wish I had stayed with piano because it definitely was another great knowledge base of a lot of different music things. But I just wanted to play guitar really badly. Yeah. And so my mom got me just the cheapest, quickest guitar she could. I think she bought it at Sears. It's like a classical boxy guitar. I finally recently found it again in the past year. It was very cool. But yeah, that was my first guitar. And I started around 13 or so really performing like at school assemblies and playing some chords along with some songs and starting to kind of write some things in the slightest bit. Silly little things, little girly poetry and songs.
I think Hope County would be a good name for a title.
I think that should be the name of the county. I think they should change it very quickly because I think people would feel a lot better about themselves living there.
So as you moved into high school and then college, you mentioned now starting to play and get out there.
Yeah, because of my stepdad, Al, he played out a lot when I was a teenager. And so I'd go to his gigs and he would be kind enough to let me play a few songs. And so even as young as 15, like he'd kind of get me up on stage to play a couple. And so that made me feel very confident and okay to like start doing open mics. And I started my first real kind of regular open mic attendance when I was about 15 years old. And it started really building my confidence. I mean, it was basically just me at first, just like looking down, playing very badly, not badly, but you know what I mean? Just not having much nuance for what I was doing and going to a weekly open mic at that age and meeting other musicians and having regular, conference with them was really, really key to getting me confident to do this in front of people for a long time.
Were you coming from your sort of rural background and then getting more into the music scene? Did you, I don't know, were there sort of wild times? Did you get into that end of things? Or
I was really, again, a lucky person as far as I really was around some really good musicians, some really good folks that just kind of looked out for me, even though I was kind of a younger musician playing out and kind of sneaking around and playing, not sneaking around, but kind of not really telling everybody my age if I was trying to get a gig necessarily. I do remember as young as 17 playing some bars where, they didn't really know I was that young. But again, I was mostly either with my dad or with, some other musicians that had been very trustworthy with me. So I was really lucky and I wasn't really that wild of a kid. Had some good friends. I remember a really fun story, actually, how my mom, my mom being a mom, she's worried about me as a teenager, starting to hang out with a group of friends that are maybe a little older than me and they're all musicians too, right? So these people become my kind of core set of friends. And she's talking to Al, my dad, and she says, I don't know. She's hanging out with everybody and I don't know what she's doing. And Al said, Kathy, I think that they really are just, when they say they're going to the mall and to the music store, I think they're just going to the mall and the music store. We were all a bunch of nerds, kind of. We were all a bunch of nerdy musicians and a couple of friends that just, were also creative and artistic, and we all hung out with each other. And My one friend jokes about how we all did really boost each other's confidence too. We all thought we were all the best, kind of musicians we had each, been lucky enough to come across. There was, it was a good group of people that we all hung out with. So I was very lucky. And then I went to college at UNCG. And then I got probably a little wilder and found a couple more different music scenes to hang out in, and moving to Charleston later on after that. So definitely fun was had, but I was very lucky and didn't really get too far into any kind of things that were too wild.
I don't even know if record stores exist in malls anymore. I don't even know if malls exist anymore, but
they're out there. They're just a little scary to go into.
Well, from those days though, is there a couple or few albums that you remember? Like I think of malls and record stores, I think of like Strawberries music. I don't know. If that was,
we didn't have Strawberries. Honestly, it was as nerdy as like going to Barnes and Noble and me going immediately to the back of or going to the very back of the store. My mom going to look for books and me running to the listening stations like as soon as I could. It was a lot of that. But as far as specific albums, I mean, it really did run the gamut. I listened to a lot of just radio for a long time because I didn't quite know. And I had, like a big influence of 90s country for a long time. And so songwriting kind of had a forefront of it. Because even though there was maybe a lot of flash going on this country song, like I learned from my dad about like publishing and songwriting and that being like a career. And so that was kind of interesting as the first bit. So a lot of those country artists and writers, and the same way, the performance versus the song being written by somebody else, that was a really cool juxtaposition for me to learn early. Because my dad would be like, oh, all those Randy Travis songs or all those Reba McEntire songs, well, this guy wrote them. And this is him doing his versions of them. And so it would be really interesting to me to have that. But then I found a little late in the time frame of it, but I found, some grungy rock. I found Pearl Jam and I found Nirvana and I found those things. And I said, oh, wow, this is a whole different kind of thing. And moving from there, I started to find the classics and the classic rock. A good friend of mine, he's an author. He's still really good. We still keep in touch and hang out every once in a while. But A.P. Smith, he gave me a couple tapes to listen to when I was in a formidable time. And it was, Bob Dylan and the band and like the Traveling Wilburys and the White Album by the Beatles. I had never heard those things before. Yeah. I was just like, what are you singing? And he was like, it's a Beatles song. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. And so he gave me that. And so those people kind of really were able to push that on me. Even my mom playing Carly Simon, Bonnie Raitt, and Melissa Etheridge. Those were like her ladies that she would listen to constantly. Like that had a big influence on me. So the full gamut of that kind of thing. And then finally moving straight on into late 90s when I was starting to be, a teenager and attending shows, that late 90s kind of both live scene and radio scene of indie rock was really where I felt at home.
Cool. And was that when you were hitting, college?
Yeah, I went to college I graduated in 2000. And so I'm giving away, it's not my stage age anymore, but it's okay. I'll be honest on a podcast. No, I went to college when I was in the 2000s. And so, and before then, again, because my mom was very patient, I'd already started really attending as much live music as possible. There were a couple bands, local bands that I really took to, and we really started seeing as much as possible. And one of them being Jump Little Children. I mean, I must have seen them several times a year throughout the years. They were great. Moving on into other bands like Guster and other bands that are just really local bands too, Chapel Hill. I discovered that bands could be from North Carolina. I discovered you could go see Squirrel Nut Zippers and you could go see, Ben Folds was from there, and those kind of things I didn't realize that was the case. I thought musicians and bands were from far away. It was a silly thought, but that started making me realize, oh, this is how you band for a living. This is how I started noticing Jump Little Children would play every 6 weeks in like the same kind of circle of shows. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a tour. So like I just started really, it's just, whatever, cracking the mystery of how to do this, seeing the merch and seeing all that stuff and collectibles and fan gathering and all that started to really make sense right at the exact time when I was moving into college age. And I started going to open mics. I went to Matty Sheets' open mic at the Flatiron when I was at UNCG. Didn't even know him then. And various things like that just kept me going. I was fine to go to college. I was happy to do it. I'm very grateful for my degree, but I knew that I was just ready to finish college so I could start becoming a musician. It was really the main goal, always.
And what was that transition? So
basically in May of 2003 or 2004, it escapes me. I think I graduated around 2003. I'm not that old. I should remember better. But I couldn't wait to kind of graduate. It was time to, and I, said to my mom, I said, well, I'm going to move to Charleston, South Carolina. I had 2 or 3 friends that had moved down there a few months prior, and I called my friend Dave Parnell and I was like, how's it going down there? And he's just like, I'm playing 4 nights a week. You should come down here. It's a great scene. And a lot of the bands, again, that I liked a lot were kind of a home base in that area, such as like, Michael Flynn and Slow Runner, Carrie Ann Hurst, and all these other kind of Charleston kind of influenced bands just kind of drew me in down there. And so some of us moved down there, and met some friends that were already there and started just gigging regularly. And a lot of those bands also taught me a lot about playing regularly in a scene and learning how to just do it for a living. I still had day jobs. I still had Starbucks, I still had day jobs that I had to do. But from Wednesday night, it was like, get off work, change clothes, get ready to sing, on your Wednesday night gig, and then get up at 4 and go to Starbucks and work and then do it all over again. And it was the best. It was absolutely the craziest time of my life, but it was the most fun. I had my own apartment that I paid for and myself, just doing music and gigs. And I stayed in Charleston for about a decade, just doing that and various other jobs and trying to grow up and grow up in the scene and do different things and move on and up. And yeah, I stayed for about a decade, and it was wonderful. And that was right from the second I graduated college until I moved back to North Carolina.
Yeah. And these days, I mean, you're still performing, you're still releasing your music, but you've also got, I'll let you explain, all the work you're doing with regard to managing and promotion and things of that nature.
What I do now, and I've transitioned into a different kind of role. It was partly, well, I'll just explain it kind of. I've started a company called Street Place Records. And so it's, in the most proper form, it's listed as a record label. But what it also is an offshoot of is kind of Street Place Entertainment, which is something that we umbrella, just kind of throwing some events at my home. I live in a 200-year-old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere in Moore County now. So we throw some events out there. So it umbrellas that organization and those kind of things. And it also is a booking company that I helped out a lot of bands find shows, both regionally and locally. But then there's a couple bands that have asked me to do more of a management role. And it sounds very official, but I'm not quite a creative consultant. Some managers kind of find a band and they say, I'm going to make you guys a star. And this is all the things you got to do that I say for you to do. Instead, I kind of have some bands that are really kind of ready. They're really tour ready. They're export ready. And they need some help, literally just keeping track of things, admin things, some booking things, trying to move a little more away from that and be more of a PR and management representation for them and just help them kind of push up and honestly, in the best way, get myself kind of fired from them so they can elevate up a rung, like it's great the work that I do with them, but the idea is to elevate them up and out to some different management or representation to get a little further out. And so all of that kind of is under that kind of organization that I run. And eventually what I'd like to focus it more towards, like I said, be a little PR for a few bands that I just want to help personally because I'm a fan of theirs. But also I'd like to really focus it more on the record label and release some music for some artists in a proper way. I know some labels, I'm still learning a lot about it. I'm still trying to read up and research, but I know there are some labels that are 501c3 nonprofits in a way, and they are more co-ops as opposed to me, taking money from a musician off the top of putting their album out. I want to be able to help them put it out, but not necessarily take their money. But of course I have like a mentor in Nashville that I talk to occasionally and ask questions to. And he's just like, he laughs when I ask him these ideas because he's just like, you don't want to make money, do you? You really don't want to make money. And I'm like, I do, but I want to also have it be not feel gross and not feel industry and not feel too limiting. And so that's what I'm working towards now. I only have myself on my label. I've had, of course, my own representation of that for a long time. And then Tom Troyer's band, Farewell Friend, just released A Silent Years on my record label recently. And that is really awesome because it's very validating because I'm a big fan of that band and record. So it felt really cool to start that process. And what it's looking like now is just I'm helping with sales and distribution, which is kind of what a label should be doing. So I'm trying to help him sell them and help him sell the physical copies and get them in record stores. And hopefully that will expand to be able to do that for 2 to 3 bands at a time. But I am just one person and I don't want to overpromise anymore. And I want to learn to scale it down. And so I'm working with Farewell Friend and a band based out of Asheville called Wild Roots and myself. And those are the 3 main kind of focuses for now. And then I'll help occasionally the other artists in the scene that I love so much and work closely with. So it'll be kind of like satellite, maybe consulting help work. But for the most part, I'm going to try to focus on the label in the next year or 2.
One of the things that I'm hearing, I think that there's maybe rightly so to a certain extent, but there's a view when it comes to artists and arts, you throw so much of yourself into it. It's a very kind of selfish endeavor. And like I said, there's some validity to that, but at the same point, you throw so much into this thing that you're driven by because you feel like you have to. And doing that, I know, I had my times in life where that's been impactful to personal relationships and things of that nature. And I was just doing it with one band and not giving a damn about what anybody else is doing.
Yeah.
But with the way you're talking, you've been doing this now for a while, trying to support other people. What's been the kind of impacts, not just to other people, but to yourself as far as, retrospection and growth and all of those sorts of things that we all want to do as human beings?
Man, that's a great question, because I've been thinking about that a lot lately, in particular about, we talk about non-monetary rewards a lot, or non-monetary payments a lot, like payments back, because that counts too. When an artist says my name on stage, like, thank you for the help for this show, or thank you for the management, that's a form of help with me career-wise. So those small things are things that always, I clock those in a way, because I'm like, that's a helpful thing to just say my name on stage at a venue a lot. That's a really, really important thing, to be a known person in the scene is a part of it. And that's a rewarding thing. But I think the thing that I'll collect it properly and think about it, because it's something I do think about a lot. The best part of it is we grow and change as artists as we get older, that kind of thing. I'm not an ageist. I think that music is actually ageless, and that's one of the most beautiful things about it. But our goals shift and change. I never thought that I'd want to live in one place in a home with a husband and build a community here. I thought maybe I'd have to live on the road forever. Thought when I was young I'd have to live in New York or LA or Atlanta to do my job. So those kind of goals and things like that do shift and change. And so in changing how I want to maybe not tour so much and maybe not be on the road so much and build a community, have things come to me in my home and build a festival scene there, someplace safe for people to record music and make, have photo shoots and make music videos. Things like that became a different kind of priority. And it made me realize I would still be able to be such a part of a scene without having to necessarily be so hard on myself on the road, or be having to put out an album every single year, or just keeping up with music in that sense. I knew that I always would write and I'd always be a part of it. And I really love making records and putting out really wonderful recordings. I don't necessarily like to tour super hard. I like to go to cities and be there for a while and try to learn about the scene, as opposed to spend a few hours in this town, spend a few hours in that town. It feels a lot better to do it like that. And so I think that working with these bands, like the best example I have is honestly when Tom was the first person to ask me to sort of manage a band at all. And I just thought in my head when he asked me out loud, I was kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this is exactly what I want to do. Like, I didn't realize this is something that I feel like I have this world of knowledge. I may not have all the answers of what exactly to do to get famous, but I've seen and observed and worked around a lot of bands since. So I just have a lot of knowledge, at least about what maybe not to do all the time and a few other guided things. And so I just realized how good it felt. And I didn't plan on a win for someone else feeling as good as a win for myself, right? So when I book a really good gig, or I get a really good win, it feels awesome, high five yourself, everything. But when I realized when I would get one for Wild Roots or for Tom's band, Farewell Friend, it felt the same. I was like, okay, this is telling me something. This is something that I know that it's going to be fulfilling for me in a way that I'm not feeling like I'm missing out. I'm not giving away. A lot of my friends was like, oh, do you feel like you're giving up opportunities for your clients? And it doesn't feel that way at all. Because if anything, it's about the right person for the right gig. There's some things, if someone presents me with an opportunity, I really try to think hard about, is this the best gig for me, or is this the best gig for maybe one of my clients? Because, and it's not that there's a hierarchy of who gets more, shots at something, but it's really, that's just about a scene in general, I think, and having thoughtful things about, having just thoughtful placements for shows and stuff. But it feels a lot more rewarding than I ever planned it would be. I thought I'd just be kind of helping out some things and just being a good music scene community member. But it's more like, wow, I really do want to help, and I want to bring others into the scene and show off how well we work together and how well we support each other. That part's very rewarding. Yeah.
And I think there's a sort of cliched thing, which I'm not going to ask you, but it's relevant to it.
I gotcha.
Cliched thing would be like, what does Laura 2024 say to Laura 2004?
Oh, man.
I think that's useless. What is interesting to me, though, is from Laura 2004, what were the things between then and now that you feel like you got right, and what were the things you missed as you went along?
The things I got right were just getting on the road and touring as an independent young musician. I feel like it's a scary thing to do, but you really can't sell your album. You really can't. I feel like your scene sometimes doesn't pay much attention until they see you going out and doing other things. And that's a little bit of a showy thing too. It's like show your work, kind of show off what you're doing in a sense. So I think I did really good on just trying to spread the word, if you will, as far as like just play a few scenes that I thought were important, hit a few college radio stations that I thought were key honestly knock off some goals of bucket lists of venues I just wanted to play at. Like I just had cool, I just knew that there was this cool venue in New York, I just wanted to play that. So like that felt like, so I feel like I got correct these proper and attainable accomplishments that I had and wanted to do. And then peppered in with a few things that I knew were good things to do as a young DIY musician, as far as, get your video out there, get your, song on the radio, get your press kit looking good, get a few, shows with a band that you have a goal to play a show with. Pick a band that you're like, I would love to play a show with them someday, and then make it happen. So those kind of things I feel like I got really good at. And the networking side of things, as far as trying very hard to just gather the most honorable people around you as you can to co-work with. So know a place in Alabama you can stay that's really safe. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I felt really comfortable and very, very lucky to have pockets of places all over the Southeast and Northeast where I could play. The things I got wrong, I feel like, is that I didn't interact with fans as much as I should. I didn't fan gather like I should have. I really should have paid more attention and gathered all those email addresses. I really should have kept more track of what I should have taken more selfies with artists I opened for that are now a lot more famous than me. So I should have remembered and to save that ticket stub. More like just to, again, not necessarily to like show off later, but more to remember and more to realize like there's levels of growth too. Like maybe that was a point where you thought you were peaking and on top, but then look at what you're doing now. So those kind of moments I think are important for artists to reflect on. And I just have a bad memory. So I just feel like I should have done that better. But fan gathering is something that I think is pretty important too. And I'm on some mailing list of some artists that I have been on their email list since I was 20 years old, and I'm not 20 years old anymore. And so the dedication of just keeping up with someone who's still doing this that long and just seeing that, it'd be pretty cool to have a mailing list that goes back that far. Those kind of things, when I see them out there, I wish I had done more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I think to me that kind of gets us to today and the future. You touched on a bit some of the work you're doing now, but if you're thinking out, it's not a sort of set time frame, right? But you've got enough experience, not only in music, but in life, to sort of start to think about, how do I want the next 10 to 20 years to look?
Yeah.
Right? What are the priorities? What are you focused on? What are some of those goals, like you mentioned, that you want? What mailing list do you want to get on?
I need to pay more attention to these things. Yeah, I'd feel like definitely the things that I look forward to are just so different than I used to, and that's totally fine to me, because that just shows just as you grow older, your priorities change and shift, like we talk about. I feel like everybody has a different definition of success, right? You really have to define your definition of success. And though it might change and adjust a little bit, I feel pretty good about my own definition of what I feel like I can say is a success. And I'm lucky in the sense that I've gotten to do a lot of things, and I'm still doing and still have my hands in a lot of different things that are in progress and are goals that I've been working on for a long time. And so that feels really good to just be working on some projects right now, even that I'm just really excited about, that are things I've always wanted to do, whether it's collaborating with other songwriters, creating programming and educational aspects of things for showing how accessible songwriting is for people and how it's accessible to a lot of people. People think like, oh, I could never write a song, but you really could. It speaks to all types of creative expression, poetry, writers, comedians, it's things like that. I'm excited that I get to think on and focus on and have maybe develop programming for in the future. So that feels really good. But in the next 10 years, I know that I want to improve the festival that I run. I would like to make it a more viable event, as far as just more money to pay those artists that keep saying yes to playing on my front porch in the middle of nowhere. We don't want to grow too big. We like that we're the house concert of festivals. And so we want to be small but mighty. So I'd like to improve just the awareness and the aspects of the festival that would make it even more fun for people to attend and be there and camp all weekend in my house. That's a big goal. I want to continue to put out and record and release really great albums. I really love the recording process. It's different from live music, so I just like that as a really nice base of things to put out on. And so I really want to just keep making some good records. And honestly, just being able to be still a part of the scene. It's not necessarily just about Greensboro, but I am very Greensboro focused. I do believe a lot in this area. And I think that we can do better both for our musicians and for the fans that want to see music and for the people traveling through. So really focusing on helping Greensboro become a bit more of at least a musician household name. And so those goals are still always kind of lofty and up in the air. Those kind of three are always kind of things I'm looking at and making moves towards.
Cool. And then if you think beyond that, I know your friend Maddie Sheets passed away, and you've been doing a lot of work
Yeah.
Just
I have he was definitely technically a client of mine. And so I have a posthumous client that I have to take care of his, is that the right word? I have a posthumous album that I'm making of his because it's almost done. And we only had one more session before it was done. Similar kind of thing.
But you're sort of a piece of that legacy. But of course, it's funny. I moved here in 2005 and I think I met Maddie once, but I was not friends with them. But
yeah, almost every musician has that.
I heard from every musician I know in Greensboro about him for years and years. He'd always come up. And so he's left a lasting legacy in the scene here. We'll have to see how long that goes on. We know that he left personal legacy as well. The people close to him, family, friends, all that sort of stuff. To that end, do you think about that? It's funny, our conversation thus far has been so much around music and scenes and the work, but it sounds like you've also tied your personal to that as well. I always think of legacy to me as like, there's probably 5 people that I'll really impact and it's going to be what that outcome is. But for you, do you think about that? And, what would, I hate to say, like, I don't want to think of it as success or failure, but what does the legacy in your mind look like with regard to how people would remember you or think about you?
I think about that a lot because I'm a woman who's not going to have children. And so there's that basic form of legacy, right? Of just literally passing on your DNA and yourself into another human being that I'm not going to do. And so I think about a phrase sometimes that somebody said to me once of, you're remembered for about 4 generations. And I think about that a lot too. And then because that's 4 generations, like with children, with grandchildren, putting your picture up on the wall and continuing to tell grandma's story. And I don't necessarily think I'm going to have that. And, so I'd love, again, one of the things I love about music is that it is, like I talk about, it is ageless. And so I have a wide variety of friends that I think that I've had both influence and learned from that are younger than me. And so I think about, maybe those people are going to be a part of talking about, maybe what LJV did for them back in the day. So I hope just continuing to help other musicians is a part of that story that goes on for me. It's another part of why I love putting it on record, putting it on tape, as, Maddie would even say, these albums and these records that I want to make. Recording things is important to me because a big influence of mine for my new album was just the general story of the Voyager golden record and how it spins out there. And I love the idea of, aliens or another life force coming across music of another species. And so I think about, well, just make a really good record because it's an archive that somebody might find someday. So those things are important to me as far as how I think about legacy. And as far as our property, my husband and I, we definitely think a lot about what Glendon will become after us because we've built something really special there. And it means so much to so many people for a variety of different reasons. And so the thing we wonder about the most is whose hands that might be in next after us, because we don't have many young people in our family after us that either are there or would have this interest to carry on such a thing that we've tried to do out there. So that's a legacy question mark for me. But other parts of it are it's just important for me to just continue to represent myself properly and genuinely on stage and on records. And I think that I can hope that my music stretches out that legacy a little longer since I'm not going to have it in maybe generational form. That's what I hope for.
Okay. To this point where you are today, your experience, what's the, I guess, most important thing you've learned so far?
A phrase that I say a lot of times is, I work on the honor system, and I don't mean it in that same way. I say it as in I work on the honor system, which means I only work with really honorable people. I think it's really important to surround yourself with the best folks you can that inspire you. And also you compete with in a very healthy way, like what they do makes you raise your bar, that sort of thing. So, and that can stretch to bandmates, friends, coworkers, etc. Just really try to travel with, try to work with, try to be around some of the best folks that you can that do both of those things for you and challenge you as well. That's really important. Don't have friends that are just going to say, this is the greatest song in the world. I have a friend I've played music with for years. I'll send him a song and he'll be like, this is trash. Like, this is awful. Fix it, please. Like, don't send me this terrible stuff anymore. And I love him for it. Matty Sheets was one of those people that I could send a mix to and he'd be like, these drums are too loud, or this snare is terrible, or maybe the bass should go at 12 o'clock instead of 2 o'clock, or, things like that. So really just letting yourself, be vulnerable to that kind of feedback and whatnot, I think is a very important part of it too. And that's something I really think is is through music things and through friendship things, through any career thing, just finding your tribe as best as you can, finding your people as best as you can.
Cool. And then I always hate asking this, but I ask it anyway.
Do it.
The list originally started like 10 years ago. I was thinking about how do we help people with end of life planning. Mm-hmm. It's shifted now, but I still ask the question because I'm curious. Mm-hmm. So we do live in a lawyer-driven world in North Carolina. I believe you pronounce it lawyer. Mm-hmm. But where you stand on wills and medical proxies and all that sort of stuff.
Oh man, what a timely question for me at this moment. Because I was Maddie's manager, I was also part of his caregiver team. And so I learned a lot recently about how important it is, if you are a musician, to make sure that your music is registered. It's very clear who's going to be taking care of it afterwards. And also just making sure those things are in place just in case something happens. And Maddie did pretty good. He had a pretty good idea of what he wanted and what he needed and was able to tell us a lot of things. Whether it's, completely illegal document or not, we're not really sure. But the bottom line is, I think, and the same thing happened with another mentor of mine, Mike Gaffney, recently. Like his music was all left behind as well, too. And everybody did pretty great about it. But I think it's very important just to make sure that your songs are somewhere that people can find them easily. I think it's very important that everybody should have a will. My family is always, everyone in my family is medical besides me, by the way. I'm the only person that is not a nurse, a pharmacist, an anesthesiologist, or something like that. Everybody in my family works at the hospital. So I've been very comfortable learning about and talking about death. My mother's a hospice nurse. And so we feel pretty prepared myself, but I think it's very important that everybody has a will, even if they're young, even if it seems like a scary thing to do. It's just very important. I've had a will since I was about 26 years old. There's not much in it as far as possessions. That changes. I update it occasionally. I've updated it now, of course, since I've been married and since we have a home and that sort of thing. And then I have some pretty clear instructions to my partner and to also anybody that might find it, what I want some possessions to happen. And I got a really great funeral playlist that nobody can adjust. I'm just saying.
So that's great. So I'll end with this, Pete, because you just brought that up was, for me right now, I am doing these interviews trying to capture people's stories, but it's really with the hope that it motivates people to start capturing their own stories. So you do that to a certain extent already with your songs and your music, but do you journal? Do you capture stories as you go on video or audio? Like how do you go about that?
I should definitely do this more as a shareable thing, because I think that content that's genuine is important. So you say video, that makes me think like that's one of those things on my list. I should make more videos of this process. Just, not that people are dying to know, but that it is just interesting and accesses what we can give people that are our fans of our music. So I have a really healthy writing process that I've stuck to for years, as far as a lot of people will call it like morning pages, or various different people will talk about it in that sense. But to me, it is really just like taking 15 minutes a day at any point in time of the day and just freehand writing as much as possible about whatever is happening. It does not have to be necessarily a Dear Diary situation. It does not have to be poetic, anything in rhyme or anything in phrasing, but just putting pen to paper every day is very important to me. Days when I don't get to do it, I just feel squirrely. I feel like off. So that's a really important process. I don't always get to do it in the morning, but I do have a job that gets me up, around the same time every day. So I try to stick to it. And then the review at least one day a week as well is really important, because we can write and fill notebooks all day, but if we don't kind of go back, and I try to circle sometimes, it's not like grading myself, but it is kind of like pulling out, the things that I think are more important to talk about later. And so that's that's just been so helpful, just to kind of archive what's been going on. And like I said, I have a bad memory, so it's really nice to kind of go back and be like, oh, I was feeling like this on this day. That makes sense, and then kind of maybe going back to a topic I want to write. I definitely sometimes spend a long time on songs. I wish I could just kind of one and done and finish this. I live with there's another songwriter, Ashley, Virginia, who stays on my property. And I've said before, I've lived with other musicians before, but I've never lived with another songwriter. And it's really awesome to live with another songwriter, because it kind of motivates you in a different way. And she'll just kind of start it, finish it, it's done. And I'm just kind of, I admire that a lot. So some songs come out like that for me, but others I do take time to go back and maybe rethink some stuff. But that process is pretty important. So I feel really good about that.
Cool.
That helps.
Well, I am grateful to Tom for, I'd heard your music before we met, but I'm grateful to Tom for introducing us.
Me too.
Grateful to you for the music you've done and, being part of this. And
this is very cool. I think it's important to talk about this kind of stuff. People get a little nervous to talk about it. People get worried about, I don't know, bad luck or something to talk about death. But I think it's really important to know where you sit with it in the most peaceful way possible. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of this. I'm really glad that Tom was able to help you make this album. He's been such a great musical influence of me for the past 5 or 6 years. He's changed the way I kind of play music in a big way and really important way. And so I'm really grateful to him to just, bring other musicians together. He's very good at, he doesn't realize it yet, but he's very good at community gathering. He's focused in on it, but he's already kind of doing it.
Yeah. Well, there's not too many people you meet. I'll say not too many people I've met around music or arts that are as authentic as he is. And,
he was my first client for a reason. I definitely believe in what he's doing. It's, not to compliment Bomb, but yeah, I think a lot of the music that he writes can be very helpful to a lot of people. I just need a lot of people to hear it.
Yeah.
I think it will help them and heal them in a lot of ways. It's true. I've met tons of musicians for about 25 years, and he is one of the most unique ones I have ever met.
Yeah. So
good guy.
For better and worse.
It might help him, it might hurt him. I'm not sure. That's with all of us, though, I think.
Well, thank you for joining again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being you, and we'll continue to.
I'll be back again. Yeah, I'm sure. House shows.
We'll get another show here, and we'll make it down to your place as well.
Yes, come to Glendon. It'll be come. You should come even when there's not a lot of people there for Glendon Fest. It's just as fun. Sometimes it's better.
As I get older, it becomes more difficult.
Exactly.
To this, but yes, I will get down there.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Laura.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Oh, that was lovely.
Yeah, it's not too painful.
No, it's not too bad.
Could be worse.
You can't hang on to yourself. You don't have to try not to hang on to yourself. It can't be done, and that is salvation. The most important thing for anyone to realize is that you and every person you see will soon be dead.